You said that you will vote no on this bill, even though, of course, we all know about the efforts that you put into it. Why are you voting no on Thursday?
It's no longer a bill. Now it's a prop.
But you talked about Democrats playing politics with this, using it as a prop, as you said. But that was exactly what your Republican colleagues did when they walked away from the bill that you put so much effort into.
The complete and utter cultishness of the Republican Party was exposed during a recent CNN interview with Republican Senator James Lankford, the man who wrote the relatively conservative bipartisan border bill that Donald Trump killed in a cynical political ploy. Senate Democrats have resurrected the bill to try to pass it, and now, to please Trump, Lankford will vote against his own bill. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at in this video. As you know, one of the recurring theses of this channel, unapologetically so, is that the Republican Party is a bad faith, authoritarian cult of personality with no limiting principle and no talent for or interest in responsible governance. And put bluntly, I have no faith in them, and I think that there's no room for the modern-day GOP in any office, federal, state, or local. I think they should lose every election. We should vote them all out until they reboot and try to become a good faith, principled, conservative opposition party, if such a thing is even possible. And some of you might be thinking, well, that's a bit extreme. Come on, there's some bad eggs in the GOP, but surely there's some good faith moderates, right? Wrong. And the curious case of James Lankford, as demonstrated in the CNN interview, is just proof that the entire party is cultishly devoted to Donald Trump, even those who know better. We're going to play some of these clips and unpack it together.
You see there, Senator James Lankford. And Senator, it's great to have you on the show. Welcome for the first time. You said that you will vote no on this bill, even though, of course, we all know about the efforts that you put into it. Why are you voting no on Thursday?
Right. It's no longer a bill. Now it's a prop. We spent 4 months sitting down in a bipartisan way to be able to work out what do we think we can actually get passed. Obviously, I was not successful in getting something that could actually get passed. The problem still remains. Everyone knows that this bill is not going to pass, and Senator Schumer is bringing it back up to try to bludgeon people. But what will be interesting on it is you're not going to have Republicans that are going to vote for it. The same Republicans didn't vote for it last time. But I expect there'll be more Democrats that will vote against it this time.
That makes sense. It's a relatively conservative bill, even though it's bipartisan. Lankford wrote it. Kirsten Sinema, an independent who caucuses with Democrats but is also pretty conservative, she wrote it, and Democratic Senator Chris Murphy. It had more conservative provisions than liberal or progressive ones, so it makes sense that Democrats are going to vote against it, but Lankford's vote against it is inexcusable because he was the one who wrote it and tried to pass it in the first place. And Kaitlan Collins calls him out on this, and that the excuse that it's a political prop really doesn't fly. But before we get into that, I want to remind you of what James Lankford said recently. He went so far as to admit that President Biden, his sworn enemy, was right, as far as he was concerned, about the border bill, and that Democrats were right, and that Trump and Republicans were wrong.
So Biden, in a rare moment, was correct. The things that he was actually laying out in that clip from the State of the Union address. It would have increased the number of border agents, would have increased the number of asylum officers. It would have radically changed the way that we did actually the processing.
So there you go. That's Lankford just a couple of weeks ago admitting on live TV that Biden was right and Trump was wrong. And now, of course, things are different. So we're going to play a couple more clips.
Okay. This has got to stop.
But, Senator, you knew the first time that you voted for it that it also wasn't going to pass then, and you still did vote for it then.
Yeah, that was actually when we're in the heat of trying to be able to get the moment out. And my challenge to my colleagues was, let's actually see if we can actually pass this. That was when we brought the bill up. Obviously, the week before, I felt like we were going to pass it. And over about 72 hours, I had quite a few folks that walked away and said, nope, not going to vote for it this time. My challenge was to my colleagues, let's step up and do it.
And you still voted for it, even though you knew you were told by your own caucus that it would not pass. But he did it anyway, because at least in his mind at the time, it was the principled thing to do because he believed in his bill and he voted for it even though he knew it wouldn't pass. But now things have changed. And again, Kaitlan Collins is really good at exposing this hypocrisy from Lankford. Like, again, you knew it was a political prop then, but you did the right thing. Now you're doing the complete opposite because it would potentially politically hurt Republicans if they were exposed as walking away from it a second time. Does that make any sense?
On asylum, obviously, that is something I know you've talked about only Congress being able to do, and legislation is obviously more permanent than an executive order that can just be undone. We saw that basically at the beginning of every administration now. But you talked about Democrats playing politics with this, using it as a prop, as you said. But that was exactly what your Republican colleagues did when they walked away from the bill that you put so much effort into 2 months ago.
And he nods along. Because it's true. It's just objectively true that Republicans were the ones who used this as a political prop. They were the ones who have been calling the situation at the southern border a crisis. They gin it up in order to, politically benefit from it, right? They hype up the situation at the southern border to politically benefit because they know it's a political winner for them. And then they walk away to benefit Trump for this wedge issue to hurt President Biden. President Biden recently talked about this as well. In a pretty accurate summary of what happened.
But this bill had majority, that bipartisan bill has majority support in the House and Senate. But I was told that other guy, that loser, I think he's having trouble. Trump called Republicans and to block that Senate bill, got on the phone and said it'd be a win for Biden and a loser for him. So they have to make sure you don't allow it to get to a vote. But he's wrong. Republicans in Congress must act because it's the right thing to do and America needs it done.
That's not enough, Mr. President, with all due respect. Even if I agree with you that this bill is the right thing to do, Republicans are not motivated by the right thing to do. But again, his summary is pretty accurate, right? Again, they worked on it for months, bipartisanly. It had a number of conservative concessions in it. Again, the Trump-supporting, Biden-hating Border Patrol Union told the Fox Propaganda Network, Newsmax, and every other right-wing outlet, please, for the love of God, pass this bill. But Trump knew that Biden would benefit from it politically. And as a result, this is the situation we're in. I think it's worth noting, however, I love having these in my back pocket, that a number of Republicans, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, have admitted that the Republican Party isn't doing anything about the southern border.
That's how you get things done for the border. You don't sit there and just pass resolutions that don't mean anything, condemning the Biden's border policies again. It's absurd. We're up here wasting our time. Absolute waste of time.
It is an absolute waste of time because, again, Republicans have no talent for or interest in governance. It's also Mitch McConnell.
We all felt the border was a complete disaster, myself included. And Chad, you remember covering the phases we went through. First, there was an effort to make law, which requires you to deal with Democrats. And then a number of our members thought it wasn't good enough. And then our nominee for president didn't seem to want us to do anything at all.
There you go. That's McConnell admitting it. But if you think that's not good enough, there's also Lindsey Graham.
And I regret that. So everybody who comes on this floor and says our border's broken, we should do something about it, you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, we didn't get there. President Trump opposed a Senate bill. We couldn't find a better way forward that would get 60 votes.
Because Trump opposed the border bill purely for cynical political reasons. So again, as far as I'm concerned, and Democrats have to make this case, President Biden has to make this case, they're surrogates. As far as I'm concerned, Republicans own this issue. It is 100% the fault of Republicans. If you and I sit down and we agree that there's a crisis, perhaps we agree to, differing degrees, right? But there's a consensus, there's a crisis, there's a situation. And then we work together in good faith to try to resolve the issue. And then at the 11th hour, I back away for purely cynical political reasons, and we can't solve the issue, we can't resolve the crisis, then it would be 100% my fault. You've done everything in your power. I would have been the one to let you down. And so it's a polling advantage for Republicans because not many Americans know the convoluted legislative and political history of this bipartisan border bill, which is why Democrats, Biden, and their surrogates have to step up and make the case. And we've seen, we talked about it in previous videos, polls with swing state voters and polls in general, that when Americans are educated on the skullduggery and the cowardice of the GOP and the cynicism of Trump, that 15-point gap between Republicans and Democrats on the border closes. because swing voters and voters get pissed that Republicans killed this bill for purely cynical political reasons. And again, if you need any further proof that the GOP as a collective, as a collective, is a cult that doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt or your good faith, look no further than the example of James Lankford, who will now vote against the very bill that he authored, that he voted for in the past. He says it's not going to pass now. There's no point in voting for it. That was the case when you voted for it the first time. Why not now? It's for pure political reasons. It's to please Donald Trump, thus proving that even people like Lankford, who claim to be conservatives, who claim to be principled conservatives, really, in the end, they're cowards who care more about their party than their country. Let me know what you think in the comments.